I've been where they are. I've been 60 pounds overweight, incredibly unhealthy, where I made excuses. I didn't keep my word with myself. I couldn't make it to the gym, but half the time that I even tried. I didn't know how to exercise good discipline on my diet. I never thought that I would be where I'm at. And I'm 55. We started this journey at 35. And if I can do it at 55, anyone can do it. And it's really, it took time, and it took me, again, not boiling the ocean, learning to not beat myself up, but to take those baby steps and control the controllables, right? There's a lot of things that happen we can't control, but picking the one or two things ongoing that I could control and building up my confidence. I speak to this person now and say, if I can do it, anyone can do it. And the book has wonderful examples of how to do that. And it's not as hard as we make it out to be. And it's, I was a bit of a quitter. And for a Gen Xer, that was surprising. It wasn't that I didn't have grit and I couldn't work hard. It was when it came to my health, I did put it, even tertiary in terms of importance, right? And I made excuses. And once I got a taste of what it was like to do something and to keep my word with myself, I was like, I can do this. I can do this one thing that's impactful. And you can too. Anyone can do that. And again, it's just giving ourselves a little bit of grace, being patient with yourself, and knowing that there's just incredible things on the other side. And, my before and after pictures, they're on my website. Go look. Oh my gosh. I mean, it's a thing, right? And if I can do it, like I said, anyone can do it, because I was in almost as bad a place, I think, as you could be, and brought it full circle. So I would encourage everyone to try, because if you have children, especially, you want to live a long, healthy life for them, even if not for yourself, right? So it's doable.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. It's author podcast. We get to meet amazing authors from around the world. I have some of the most motivating and fun people to talk to. And Nicole is definitely one of those for us today. I'm excited to talk to her about her journey as an author and all the great stuff she's up to. Great new book out there in the world for you at the time of recording. It's ready, and you're going to love it. And Nicole Ward's here. Nicole, welcome to the show. Glad to have you on the podcast.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Excellent. Great. Nicole, we like to start here with everybody because we have listeners around the world and we have authors from around the world. And I'd like to celebrate where our authors are from. Can you tell us where you are in this big world of ours?
I am in West Los Angeles right now, in an area called Beverly Glen, if you know LA at all. So
nice.
That's where I am. And I'm from here. Actually, I'm from Pasadena originally, so not too far from where I grew up.
Very good. So now that's one thing I noticed with my American friends as I'm in Canada. Every time I ask them, hey, are you born and raised there? They're like, nope, I'm usually a transplant from somewhere else in the country and I moved to this spot. But it's nice to hear that's where you're born and raised. So that's great.
Don't hold it against me.
There you go. No, I think that's a badge of honor, actually. I think that's great. That's wonderful. Good. Nicole, we have authors who listen to the show and they're brand new to writing. They dream of the day of being able to get out there and talk about their book and share it with the world. And here you are, you're right there. And you know stuff that they would love to learn from you. And if they had a few moments of your time, they'd just love to ask you questions. Is there anything that you can offer up to a new author to inspire them to go from an idea, a concept, to reality and actually have a book for the world? Anything we could do to inspire somebody listening to that this journey is possible, even in a world of so many authors? There's room for you as an author. What would you say to them?
Oh, that's such a great question. And I appreciate it so much because for me, I didn't always see myself as an author. I've always loved to write, but it took an inspiration, which took me getting to 55. Well, actually at the time I was 53. It's only been 2 years when I had the inspiration, which was a confluence of like, wow, I know some things about these 3 areas. And I saw how I had the vision of like how they intersected for the first time. And that inspiration led me to just sort of volcano, if you will, the book and the work that I've subsequently been doing. And so I think as someone who never saw themselves as an author, it's not to say that I didn't feel that there's been a book simmering in me somewhere like a soup, on the stove. But it took inspiration to really get me to then all of a sudden focus. And then once I did, it was so much fun. And I've heard writers over the years, as someone who's an avid reader, which I am, I've listened to a lot of authors talk about their process. And so many of them, it sounded daunting. It sounded frankly, like something I didn't want to do, writer's block, or spending hours and hours with coming up with the nothing, or, that it was just so arduous, the process. And for me, once I was convicted about what I wanted to say, it was like, game on, let's do this. And I had a blast. And part of that was I had a really good editor who's a wonderful human, Mark Leichleiter. I know you're out there somewhere. And he got me and was able to never squish my innate sort of vibe and voice, but he gave me guidance, which I needed as a first-time a writer of a book. But he was able to balance that so that it honored kind of what I was trying to say, my style. If that's a bit of a thing to egotistical thing to say, like I have a style, but he got my essence, and so the process was actually. I don't want to say easy, because that wouldn't be true. There's a lot of work to it, but it was fun. It was enjoyable. It was a great challenge. So I'm not sure that I answered your full question there, but that's my gut response.
I like that. The one thing I encourage any creative person, especially authors, as we talk to them today, is to have somebody in your corner who's your cheerleader in the process of writing. Don't try to do this on your own. Have somebody there to kind of just, on those moments where you don't feel motivated or it's a bit of a struggle, there's someone cheering you on. So for you in your journey, Nicole, who was your cheerleader? Because they're going to listen to this. I want to give them their props. I want to acknowledge them for what they've done for you. Who was that person for you?
Thank you for saying that. It was for me. It was Mark Leichleiter, as I mentioned, to my editor, and it was Trisha Hoover, who I'll share something else that I think was meaningful as a first-time author that your listeners might appreciate and may have already, dealt with. But Trisha Hoover helped me with book design, and when I talked to publishers and agents. Agents were really good responding to my queries and telling me, you're in this really unique space, so you're not my GM, but keep going, right? So they were encouraging, actually, agents via all the queries that I sent out. But when I talked to two publishers that liked my content and said, sure, we'll consider publishing you in 2 years, I was like, what? Like, that's insane. There was a window for me to sort of capitalize on. Mine was somewhat time sensitive because it is nonfiction. And so when I heard that, all of a sudden I started to get curious about self-publishing. And so I went to people who were other authors, to your question, which is, who was my support system? Other authors said, look, self-publishing is not what it used to be. It's actually very viable to take that approach. And when you do it and you invest in the right ways, publishers will come behind you and then publish your work. So don't invalidate taking a self-publishing route. So in fact, that's what I've done. And with the voices along the way that really carried me were ones that said, this is really good. It's just a little bit unique in terms of where it sits. And if you want to do this, here are the things you should invest in that will get eyeballs sooner rather than later once you do. And that was book design. Getting a really good editor to make it look really tight and really sharp, and then someone to come back as almost a second set of eyes from an editorial perspective, but then really investing on what the book looks like and how it's put together. So that was also a really smart choice that I made because people were willing to listen to me, willing to coach me. And I didn't know, right? I didn't have a preconceived idea about what was better or worse, etc. So, and then of course there's just my friends who were like, keep going. This is a great, this will be great for folks. So
yeah. I think that anything, again, creative takes a village, right? Like we might be the person that's actually writing the book or creating the music or doing the podcast, whatever. But I think when we can have people in our corner who see us for what we can be on the days when we can't see that in our own self, that I loved having those kind of people around us because we get to this finish line And we know that there a bunch of people have been cheering us on the whole time. That's why people come to those crowds and cheer on a race or whatever. They're there to support
Totally.
the people that are actually running the race.
An additional comment based on what you just shared is having an advisory board, a personal advisory board. And I have one. And when I had the first final manuscript, I sent it out to the 13 people that are on my personal advisory board. And the compilation of that is I curated it across industries, across male, female, all the genders, all the things, right? I tried to get, I have my advisory board is variegated, right? Lots and lots of differing opinions and thinking. And I shared my final manuscript as I got close to the end with them because I wanted them to be brutally honest. I'm like, what have I missed? What's not in here that should be? What's carrying, what's not? And so that was a wonderful bit of feedback that allowed me to make some key pivots and changes close to the end that I think have made it a better book. So keeping in a personal advisory board, I think, is something that everyone could consider.
That's fantastic. I'm thinking of how can I create one of those? So to that point, how do you create that kind of advisory board? And how long have you been working alongside with these people in community?
I've known some of these folks for decades, and there are a couple in my 13 that I've just met in the last 2 years, but it's business professionals, it's artists, it's 2 other authors. So I went back and I just look at who is in my circle as a human that I really value, that I respect, that don't think like me, that are not afraid to tell me the truth, even when it's when it hurts, but doing it in a kind, constructive way. But I wanted people that would look at my stuff and go, this pops, this doesn't, or hey, for what it's worth, here's my honest take. I had also other professionals. I had another biohacker on my board, and then I have I have 2 sales executives. So I got a real that personal advisory board are just people that know me really well, and that, like I said, are very honest and willing to be direct with me, and that I can trust.
So I'm going to walk into my local bookstore. I'm going to go looking for your book. And there's a sea of books, all the different categories, the little signs that are above each section, nonfiction, sci-fi, children's books, business books, mindset. I walk in and I'm like, I'm looking for your book, Nicole. I want to go to the section. Being such a unique book, where am I going to find you? What aisle are you in? Where are you?
Great question. It's going to be in health and wellness first.
Okay.
And then second, it would be in business.
Okay.
Those are the 2. Yeah, it's not a book on how to sell better, and it's not a book on nutrition. It's right in between. So it's about health and wellness. And what I'm really solving for, Dave, at a macro level, my broader platform is called the executive athlete. And my world as a corporate executive, my whole career is C-suite and board members. And what I'm solving for is bringing consciousness to power. Whether we like to admit it or not, power is concentrated in the hands of a very few people in this world. And those few people are inflamed, dysregulated, unhealthy, and frequently make really unhealthy choices. And the downstream effects of that are not benign. They affect all of us. And so with my circle of influence, I've chosen the greatest area of impact I can make is bringing a sense of regulation, recovery, health, longevity, and wellness to those folks that are in real positions themselves to make a downstream impact. And so that's really the broader sort of vision and mission. And so all of this sort of, again, creates kind of a unique, I'm in a unique space, I think, kind of doing what I'm doing with this.
Okay, great. So we've covered the authors listening. That's amazing. I love inspiring them. We kind of know now where to find your book in the store. Let's get into the book and talk about this a little bit more. Let's just say, Nicole, we have a listener who has no idea what biohacking is. They have zero idea. I want to make sure they feel welcome in the conversation so they don't have to be kind of playing catch up while we're talking. So let's just kind of start with that just as a foundation. We're going to build on it. But biohacking, can you kind of give us the kind of the beginner's guide to biohacking so we can jump into the conversation?
Sure. And I'll make it really simple and accessible for everyone. And I think it's a great way to lead in. biohacking is about optimizing our health for longevity, using supplements, using technology, and various tools to get at data that we otherwise don't have, to really look at that data and understand what's my bioindividuality, how am I aging, and how can I age at my best. And so biohacking, it sounds really, fringy, and some of it is. A lot of the things that we do as biohackers are pretty fringy. I mean, I just did something a couple of weeks ago, but it's more about, if you're looking at how do I live a health span, a long, happy life, I want to optimize and do the best that I can. It's about rethinking diet, exercise, nutrition, all of those things in light of tools and supplementation and resources. So hopefully that helps a little bit.
Okay. So what puts you on the path of biohacking? I don't think this is something that we would all naturally just know of, like it's just natural to us, that we could all just think, oh yeah, we all biohack. Everybody does. No, you actually have to decide this. Like something got you to here. What got you onto this path?
Yes. 20 years ago is really when I started. I was 60 pounds overweight. My lab work at 35 was that of a 55-year-old woman. I had joint pain, brain fog. I was climbing the corporate ladder and doing way too much, trying to cram it all in, doing all the things. And I rolled my Land Rover. And thankfully, no one was seriously injured in that accident. But I broke two fingers of my left hand. Yeah. And when I crawled out of my vehicle, my Land Rover, the first thing I thought was, I got to call my boss because I'm not going to make the next meeting that I'm going to. Mm. That's broken, right? Like that was my wake up call. And that's what set me on this journey of losing weight, of learning about nutrition, understanding what's my bioindividuality. How do I become my best? How do I operate well, and get good sleep and do the right things? And so that started me on a path of reading a ton of medical journals, reading a lot of nutrition books. Podcasts weren't even around 20 years ago. Yeah. But then I know, right? But then as soon as they started, I became an avid podcast listener. I've sought out board certifications. I have 2. And then I'm currently getting my Master's of Science in Nutrition from Tufts, Friedman School of Medicine. And so it's been a journey, in answer to your question, of me figuring out my own health and biohacking, tying it to your first question. It was a way of it was this tribe that I discovered who were about, how do we use cutting edge science and what's going on at the very edges of medicine and technology to better ourselves. And, 15 years ago, that was getting a watch that told you things, or, an Aura ring, right? Or, or dialing in your, interesting supplementation or whatnot, right? So, and now there's tons of examples of, biohacking. So anyway, but that's what got me here.
Let's debunk something around biohacking that maybe people get wrong, that might make them not be as interested in biohacking, or they're not curious enough to actually give it a chance to kind of go and do the research. What's something that biohacking isn't, or is misunderstood about biohacking, that your book is going to help people to understand better?
Hopefully I demystify it with practical examples, tactical examples of easy things that you can do to incorporate into your life, that make using a supplement occasionally something that is absolutely approved and that you could buy at off Whole Foods or something. That there's things that you can use or try that are very safe and very practical that could get you a much better result than what you're currently experiencing. Now, that's not to say that supplements solve everything, right? Supplements are what the word is, right? Yeah. They're meant to be in addition to. They don't take away the need for really good sleep or a really good diet, right? Yeah. They augment, they don't replace. Yeah. So I think other myths about biohacking is that you have to walk around like Brian Johnson, with things on your head and, and getting, having needles coming out of your arms because your blood's getting tested every minute of every day. That is not what biohacking is, right? I mean, that's, again, one person using very fringy science to push themselves as they choose to. But for, the average person, having a Whoop band or an Aura ring, that's a wonderful way of using a tool that can give you real-time feedback and real data about themselves individually, their own bioindividuality, so they can accountably check, well, gee, you know what? I ate really late last night and boy, did I not sleep well,
Right.
Or, gosh, I shouldn't have had that 15th glass of wine last night. My HRV was horrible. So, there's data that you can get from very medium steps. You don't have to be a Brian Johnson.
The title of the book is interesting to me as well. You talk about it being in two unique spaces within the bookstore, if we were walking into our local store. But the title of the book as well, there's an element here that seems kind of athletic and sports focused as well. And I'm reading it going, So explain to me the rationale behind the title and why you chose the title you have for this.
Sure. Yeah, there's very little to do in my work with being an athlete. It's more about the ethos of athleticism.
Yeah.
And the reason why I use athlete as the book title and as my broader platform, the executive athlete, is because the way athletes prepare and the way they execute and then the way they recover is the way we all should be thinking, especially as corporate citizens, for those of your audience who work, in an office or in some sort of a corporate environment. And we need, if we approached things from that mindset, from an athlete's mindset, we would be honoring and our own bioindividualities and how we are able to go into the world, but we don't. We hammer, we drive, we're busy, we crush it. We look at, I didn't get much sleep last night as a badge of honor. It's like, oh, I'm working so hard, I'm so busy. And athletes, if they did that, would never be able to perform. And so it's really that ethos of like approaching things like an athlete would, which is when you prepare and when you execute, you crush it. And then you know when to recede. You know when to give your body an opportunity to recover, to relax, to rejuvenate. And so the book brings in a lot of that thinking, but by no means, am I an athlete or a professional athlete? Although I do interview some who've gone on to be corporate citizens themselves. So
okay. All right. Yeah, that's great. I like that qualification. That's really good. I think the athletic side, too, has a component of having a coach, somebody who can speak into your life and give you pointers, help you be better, right, on the field or whatever you're doing. So there's that side of it as well. I kind of feel like your book is like a coach for us as it kind of leads us and guides us through the process. It's kind of there and kind of a little nod to the athlete side of the title in the book, I think, too.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Hopefully.
Excellent. Yeah, that's what it's worth. Good. Okay, so biohacking for the sales athlete. You're also a podcaster as well, which is exciting. Can we talk just take a little side tangent? I love podcasting. Get a little bit about your shows and what you do there, and we'll come back to this, obviously, but I want to honor that as well because we can have more time with you through your podcast journey as well. Let's talk a little bit about that quick.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. I'll do the business, the professional one first, and then talk about the one that ties more into my executive athlete platform. The first one is called Aon at the Top, and I'm currently the senior vice president of sales for Aon. We're an $18 billion company, so we have a lot going on, and that is a very full-time day job for me. And one of the things that I asked when I joined the firm about a year and a half ago was I said, look, I would really love to do a podcast because my network of humans and who I've been connected to for many, many years are executives and who are board members who have taken most of the time, a very interesting journey to get there. And I really believe that it's important that we empower younger generations that are coming up with tools and tactics and insights on how they also can climb the corporate ladder, right? To get to the C-suite, to get to the boardroom, whatever they're aspiring to do. And I said, if I help the C-suite and the board members I know tell their story on their journey and paths that got them there, I think there's some real value. And Aon loved that idea. And they said, absolutely. And so, some folks have said, well, why don't you interview Bezos or Zuckerberg or whomever?
Yeah.
And actually, it's by design. We at Aon have some massive public companies as clients. But the goal is I've chosen to go after a lot of mid-market public companies because they're accessible. And it's real, right? And that doesn't mean I want to limit anyone. But if they want to hear how Jeff Bezos, there's been books and all sorts of things written about that.
Right.
But what about, the C-suite efforts or the board efforts of someone who's working for a $500 million public company, right? There's real accessibility and real tactics and tools and things that people can walk away from those conversations with. So that's Aon at the top. And it's been a blast to do. And I've been really lucky to interview some amazing leaders and really just innovators on that. And then the personal podcast is called The Executive Athlete. And that one is newer and, of course, building with the launch of the book here. But the goal is to interview other executives who are really into health and wellness. So the spin there is other executives who are either biohackers or very, very into that health, wellness, and longevity space. And so that's a different conversation, right, than the one that I have that's very, very corporate. So they're two different podcasts, but I'm having so much fun doing them. Now I know why you have so many. Who knows how many more I'll have. You're inspiring me.
Yeah. I'm kind of like a podcast hacker, I guess you could say, as compared to biohacking, right? So there you go.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. No, this is great. I always love sharing podcasters and other shows that people can fall in love with. And I love that your podcast specific to the executive athlete really kind of feeds really well into your book as well. So that's kind of nice that you can share that audience between the book and the listeners as well. Amazing. We'll have links for all those, everyone. Look in the show notes. Go and support Nicole on her amazing podcast as well. Let's get back to the book, Nicole, as well. So if you could outline for me then who you're intending to help with the book. I really want to make sure that as they listen to this, they're like, Nicole is writing this book for me. This is my book. I want to make sure that they have this really easy on-ramp into your world. So tell me a little bit more about who you have in mind during the process of writing the book, so that we can kind of make sure they feel welcome here. So a little bit more about your ideal audience for your book.
Well, thank you for that. What I've heard from my advisory board and from those that I've shared it with subsequently is that anybody who's in a high-performing job can value from the book.
Okay.
In fact, much of my feedback was, you need to title this The Executive Athlete. However, as you and your listeners probably know, for me, we write what we know first. And so the intended recipient for this book at the outset was the sales executive or anyone in a consulting role or highly stressful role that has a lot of travel, that is disrupting their circadian rhythm on the regular, staying in hotels with stale air, eating bad food late at night, over networking, over drinking. I mean, anyone who is challenged in a high-performing role, this will land with. But my tribe, as a chief sales officer and SVP of sales, my tribe are sales executives. So I wanted to write that first. And so that is definitely, that was the intention. But that this, again, being my first endeavor, I think it was the right one. My next book will be The Executive Athlete, right? And it will be, a different spin on this. But that's basically the short answer to your question.
Okay. So because people in those roles, when they are traveling and when they're not doing healthy decisions based on where they are at any given time, it's not like they can just stop staying in hotels. It's not like they can just stop traveling, right? That's part of their role. So, but there are healthier choices we can make. And that's where your book's going to help step in, right?
Exactly. And I'm so passionate about it. I get so worked up about it. But, and my friends laugh at me because they're like, you are clearly passionate about this topic. I'm like, I know. There are so many other easy options and I've hacked them all, Dave.
Yeah, right.
I mean, and part of all of my Instagram and my TikTok and my all the stuff that I post and it is all about, hey, let me demystify this for you. Let me show you, here's the quick and easy, down and dirty. And again, nothing is a substitute for eating right. That has to be foundationally happening. But there are other things that you can do that can make it so much easier. And the book is about, I'll give you an example. I was getting my teeth cleaned with my dentist last week. And she said, Nicole, I just can't get myself up at 5 a.m. I've got a 4-year-old. She goes, I want to work out. I look at your videos. I get so inspired. And then I just hit the snooze button. I just can't do it. And I said, what if I told you that you don't have to do it at 5 or 5:30 in the morning? What if you did what is very, very viable, which is called exercise snacking throughout your day? I said, you know what? Here's your dentist office. I said, put some bands, some exercise bands right over there on that hook. And I said, maybe put two pair of like 5 or 7 pound weights right over there in the corner. And I said, make it a competition with your team here. I said, in between every client that comes in, you do 50 arm pulls or you do 25 air squats. And then between that and the next client, you go up and down your stairs right outside your door for just a quick 3 minutes. I said, do you realize if you did that throughout the course of your day, you'd get 45 minutes of exercise in? Exercise bites, exercise snacks. Take that approach. And so she was like, oh my gosh, I never thought about it that way. And I said, it's actually really good because that way you're not stable for hours and hours at a time. You're actually disrupting yourself a little bit with these little pops throughout the day, which is wonderful for our heart rate variability and other things. So I share that as one example of something that everyone can do. Is that a biohack? Maybe, maybe not, but it's in the book because I feel like we need real solutions. We need real tactical things we can do. We are all busy. We've got 1,000 things coming at us with social media and all of the input and the feed. We need real things that we can do to make our life easier, to know that when we get to the airport, I can do these 3 things when I'm there that are going to keep me out of the candy section and Cinnabons and etc. and keep me really prepared for that meeting when I land, when I get to wherever it is I'm going, right? Feeling at my best as opposed to the opposite, right? Yeah. So that's the goal, is it's meant to be really tactical and very applicable and real.
So why do we treat ourselves as such an afterthought? Like, why are we the last on the list? Our own personal health, our physical health, our nutrition. Everything else seems to be more important. Everyone else is like our relationship with everyone, caring for everybody, our jobs, our responsibilities, right? You mentioned the accident you had and your first thought is I'm gonna have to call my boss so I, don't disappoint them. Why are we always so last on the list? Why is it?
I think even when people want to prioritize themselves, Dave, behavior change is really hard. And when people say they'll get the inspiration, like they'll listen to this podcast and they'll be like, okay, I'm going to get the book. I'm going to do all of it. And I think, and this, I'm going to come back around specifically to your question, but I think this is really tangentially important, which is that we try to boil the ocean. We set ourselves up to fail. Right. And so people will say, I've tried that 4 or 5 times and it's never worked. And it's because people try to do too much. It's like my dentist saying, I got to wake up at 5 a.m. I got to get my gear on. I got to go all the way to the gym, ignore the 4-year-old. Never going to happen. So instead, we need to take one thing, maybe 2, and implement those things. Little bite-sized approaches. And then we build that self-efficacy and that confidence. And then before you know it, that leads to another thing. And like, wow, I did that. I can do this thing. And so I think behavior change is underneath your question. But I think we don't want to treat ourselves last. I think most of us know the right things to do. We just make it harder than it needs to be by making it this big thing. If I got to change it all. I've got to do it all. No, we don't. And guess what? That will never work.
Yeah, that would be your December 31st goal of I'm going to start a new year, going to sign up for all these things, right? And then 2 weeks into January, we're abandoned it all.
Exactly. It's just the cycle as opposed to going, you know what? I'm going to do one thing. And I'm really just going to do this one thing and it feels good. And that's it, right? And then you work to the next one, whatever that is. And then not beating ourselves up, giving ourselves some grace. It's, we are, I think, distracted by so many things these days that we don't don't stop to acknowledge the good things that we do, right? And I think, when it comes to our health, I think a lot of it, and going back to your original question, is why do we put ourselves last? Our culture in the United States, and there's so much data and science on this, we are all about hammering and doing and getting it done and accomplishing and pushing and grinding. That is how we were built as a country. That is our ethic. It's kind of wired into us, right? And if we're not busy and slammed and exhausted and pushing it, then there's something wrong. And so with that scenario, of course we put ourselves last, right?
Yeah.
Of course, we're going to go for the easy food that's in a package. We're going to go to, let's just pick something up on the way home or order Uber Eats rather than going to the effort of cooking a meal, So
for biohacking for the sales athlete, are you giving us permission to be a little selfish, a little self-first in our approach to life then?
absolutely.
Yes.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think absolutely the willing, I think and many of the chapters sort of touch on this, but I go back to the place of ultimately, we all want to be the best partner we can be, the best colleague, the best parent. And we don't get to be the best version of ourselves if we're grinding, if we're not giving ourselves that grace, putting ourselves first and allowing ourselves recovery. Now, I'm not saying we don't need to lean in sometimes to do the hard thing. We all need some grit, but that's not most of our issues. Most of us push too hard, and allowing that space and grace for recovery is really important.
So somebody listening to this, Nicole, is going, sounds great, Nicole. Love the idea of the book, but you haven't met my boss. My boss would never allow me to do little snack exercise things between clients. None of this stuff is going to be possible with my boss. Now, I'm sure that all of your bosses, Nicole, have been wonderful, easy to work with, giving you lots of freedom and availability to do these things and take care of yourself. And no demands have ever been placed on you, right? No. So let's talk to the bosses, the people that are above us, who will make this actually a reality for us and give us the space to take care of ourselves, and so that we can be a better productive person for them. Let's talk to them. How is biohacking and how is your book also helping the people above us to also give us a space to be healthier?
Absolutely. And that is what my Executive Athlete podcast is about. And I definitely call this out in my book. And that is that to be the best leaders we can be, we have to allow for recovery in our team. We have to allow some of these things. And what I advocate for is that if you want a better result, if you want more revenue, if you want to close more deals, you will allow recovery. You will create the space for balance. I believe that the biggest competitive advantage that we can give ourselves is actually self-regulation and caretaking of ourselves. That absolutely positively affects the bottom line. And there's data and numbers around this, right? And I cite some of those, and I have them in many different presentations that I do around this. There's real science to say that burnout's a thing. And if you want to recoup the investment that you've made as a leader into your staff, you've got to balance how you approach that staff. Grinding them is not the answer. And it's imperative that we recognize that allowing that balanced approach for health and wellness, whether it's, across the table in a meeting, whether it's allowing that particular staff to go home early on a day that they've got a thing, whether it's, giving grace to, someone who's had to take some leave due to grievance, right? Who knows, right? But we have to build those things into our model, especially the leadership model. But I do believe that even as a staff, if you were a staff level human in a corporate environment, there are still ways that you can take ownership of your health and carve those moments. And I use this in the book, and forgive me, but when we all have to go to the restroom multiple times a day, sitting and doing box breathing while you're in the restroom for 2 minutes, no one can take that away from me. Again, not trying to be gross, but really, you think about going on a break during the course of your day outside to get some sunlight, Absolutely. Who can ever fault us that? And those are things that we are empowered to do no matter what level we are, at what company or environment we're in.
I'm thinking of the person sitting at their desk for 8 hours straight. They haven't moved. They haven't stood up. They haven't gone anywhere. They have their food with them, their lunch with them. They're just going to push through and get this task done because they have a deadline. And the unhealthy choice of just sitting every day and never moving, never getting up and getting exercise, doing something, like I said, going out to getting some sunlight. I'm thinking that would also be an ideal person for your book, is just to realize that you might not be doing like some of the unhealthy things we would hear about that are pretty common, but sitting and not being mobile and getting up and getting your exercise is just as dangerous for you as any of those other things, right?
It is. And there's none of us that can't take a call while pacing in our office or our cube, right? I have a thing where if I choose to watch content at the end of the night, if there's a show that I'm going to watch, I don't get to sit and watch that show. I pace right behind my sofa, and it gets me 4,000 or 5,000 steps in, and I'm not thinking it's that hard, but that gets you moving, right? So how many of us, when we are working, we can take a call while we're walking? You could do 25 air squats while you're on that call. Just go off camera for 30 seconds, right? Dropping and doing, push-ups, or just, again, sitting at your desk and doing bands. No one could even see you. Like, I'm moving my arms right now like I'm doing a band workout and no one would even know. So there are things we can do if we're committed to doing them. But I hear you that a lot of times it's hard. It is hard to get in. This is why I said you don't try to do everything. We don't try to boil the ocean.
Right.
You pick a thing or two that you can, sort of, dig into.
I love it. No, I want to honor your time, Nicole, because you are a very busy person. And to have time with you is an honor for me to have you on the show. So let's talk about your website. And I have a closing question for you that I'd love to get your thoughts on. Well, let's talk through the website and where we can send our audience to follow the journey, the launch of the book, the podcast. It's all there. So talk about your website a little bit.
Thank you. So I'm really lucky. I have a wonderful marketing guy. Forgive me for calling him a guy, but his name is Sarut, and he has done wonderful things for me. And he, in addition to creating all my platforms, also my website. So it's www.NicoleElizabethWard.com. Anyone wants to reach me, it's Nicole@NicoleElizabethWard.com. You can email me there. And so on my website, I have what's called a gym bag, further leaning on the athlete theme. And that has all sorts of resources in it. Like if you're struggling with sleep or travel, it's got all sorts of little hacks. It's free. You just sign up for it and you can get it. And it's kind of like a nice little toolkit of some ideas for inspiration for any of your listeners that are like, what's the athlete gym bag? What does that mean? So they can go to my website and find it. I'm on Instagram. It's the Executive Athlete Podcast. On TikTok, it's the same, the Executive Athlete Podcast. And what am I forgetting? Oh, and all of my, the Executive Athlete Podcast is on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. And going strong. I have so many great episodes coming up that I haven't published yet because I'm trying to do them every 2 weeks. So we're ramping up. So doing good there. So I'd love anyone who wants to give a listen, and I'm always open to feedback and questions. I'm on LinkedIn as well. I do a newsletter on LinkedIn and Substack. Nicole Ward 111, I think, is my tag on LinkedIn, and I think and Substack, it's the Executive Athlete Podcast too.
So many great places to find you, and I love that you're out there serving your community so well. At the beginning of the episode, we wanted to get your encouragement for authors. I want to close with your encouragement for readers. I'm thinking of a person, Nicole, who's made those plans and failed. They've gotten down on themselves. They're in this spiral of, I've tried everything and it never works. I'm never committed to it. I can't follow through. You mentioned the kind of that in your story already, but I just want to end with this. I want to encourage them as they listen to this, that health is not something for everyone else. And being a healthy person is not for everyone else. It's for you as a listener to us right now. And I want you to close us off as a podcaster and as an author and a wonderful advocate for living a healthier life. Can we just encourage that person who feels like they just can't do what we've talked about and do it consistently, right? Your book's going to help. Your podcast, everything you're putting in the world helps. But can you just talk to them directly if I move out of the way? And can you kind of wrap us up with that?
Absolutely. I'd be honored to. I've been where they are. I've been 60 pounds overweight, incredibly unhealthy, where I made excuses. I didn't keep my word with myself. I couldn't make it to the gym, but half the time that I even tried, I didn't know how to exercise good discipline on my diet. I never thought that I would be where I'm at. And I'm 55. We started this journey at 35. And if I can do it at 55, anyone can do it. And it's really, it took time, and it took me, again, not boiling the ocean, learning to not beat myself up, but to take those baby steps and control the controllables, right? There's a lot of things that happen we can't control, but picking the one or two things ongoing that I could control and building up my confidence. I speak to this person now and say, if I can do it, anyone can do it. And the book has wonderful examples of how to do that. And it's not as hard as we make it out to be. And it's, I was a bit of a quitter. And for a Gen Xer, that was surprising. It wasn't that I didn't have grit and I couldn't work hard. It was when it came to my health, I did put it, even tertiary in terms of importance, right? And I made excuses. And once I got a taste of what it was like to do something and to keep my word with myself, I was like, I can do this. I can do this one thing that's impactful, and you can too. Anyone can do that. And again, it's just giving ourselves a little bit of grace, being patient with yourself, and knowing that there's just incredible things on the other side. And, my before and after pictures, they're on my website. Go look. Oh my gosh. I mean, it's a thing, right? And if I can do it, like I said, anyone can do it, because I was in almost as bad a place, I think, as you could be, and brought it full circle. So I would encourage everyone to try, because if you have children, especially, you want to live a long, healthy life for them, even if not for yourself, right? So it's doable.
Excellent. Nicole, thank you so much for being here on the show. Biohacking for the Sales Athlete, everyone. When, not if, when you buy this book, please leave a great review. Let other people know why you love this book, what connected with you as a reader, so that they also will see your words and inspire them to go and support Nicole and purchase the book and share it. Again, love what you're doing. Nicole, I'd love to have you back in the future as you work on new projects. Hence the name of the show, Living the Next Chapter, right? So come back in the future, and I'd love to reconnect with you. And congratulations on a great book and a heart for people and us to live healthier lives. It's a win for all of us. So, Nicole, thank you for making time for us.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure, and super, super grateful. Thank you so much, Dave.
Excellent. Hey, thank you so much again for pressing play. As you've heard, great guests on the show. And one thing you didn't hear in this conversation is what? What did you not hear? Think about it for a second. That's right. Not a single solitary commercial for a mattress or a supplement or a whatever you call it. No. Why? Because we don't want to break up the conversation with commercials. So the fact that you're still here means that you are a fan of the show, I'm assuming. So if you want to help to keep the podcast going and to make me feel really happy, all I really care about is coffee. Okay? I just got to be honest. I love coffee. I'm drinking one right now. It's starting to get cold. I need to warm it up. Helping us with our Buy Me a Coffee link over at livingthenextchapter.com, and also in the show notes, helps kind of keep the lights on around here. Remember, I'm doing this for free. I'm paying for everything. So I would love to have a little coffee donation, even $5 kind of fills up my cup. And I would love to enjoy a coffee from you. So if you're interested, again, thank you for listening. But you can use our Buy Me a Coffee link and fill up the cup. Thanks for being here.